talking about limitations, barriers. It's a self-created prophecy. Got to destroy that. Go, do something. And operational thinking is more doing the same thing, and you know what it's going to be if you dig the mud. Project success is just not time and cost overrun. It's just not there anymore. It's beyond time and cost overruns. But time is most important. Time is the single most important. People will have return on time rather than return on capital. Return on investment will be measured, in my opinion, not on capital formation, is on the time, what valuation time we have done. So the Rome's theme, project management to run, is really the essence of the whole change in society. And ax squared plus bx plus c is common, x1 and x2 roots, you can find out time and cost overrun. You've got to move out of it. At the end of the project, how many times did you like? How many times did you smile? How many times, how much you're missing your team members? If everybody is happy at the end of the project, I'm sorry, you might have done the project before time and less than the budget, but you have not achieved something else. People should be sorry to leave each other. Mourning, I'm going to miss Luigi. I wish it could have continued. Thank God it's completed. That's not really good. Swami Vivekananda, one of the foremost thinkers, he has no religion except the religion of knowledge. And he went to Chicago. Whatever we are now is the result of our acts and thoughts in the past. And whatever we shall be in the future will be the result of what we think and do now. Forward vector. And this got to be seen what things we do now. There is implication in the future. And that is improving the probability of the future. You cannot control the future, you can create the future by looking at the probability. What do you do? And this is a optimization of the present. What we can do now. People who are in this race, people who are optimizing the present, they have no future. Firefighting is optimizing the present, and therefore firefighting destroys the future, besides destroying the buildings. Firefighting we should try to avoid. It's not possible if we don't live in a utopian world. Dynamic adaptability, not one size fits. And this is no very rigid connectivity between all the components. Those things are also disappearing. Pablo Picasso said a very beautiful thing. I'm always doing what I cannot do so that I may learn how to do it. That is project thinking. We'll prefer to do the same thing because we are comfortable in doing the same thing. Because we know how to do the same thing. And the mind becomes not very proactive. New encounters, new situations, go out. Like the children, we should become children. Children having curiosity. They want to do everything new because they don't have any that baggage with them. Curiosity. Playing around. We should rediscover that curiosity. New things. We should not be afraid of falling. Children are never afraid of falling. They fall and fall and fall. Abraham Lincoln was never afraid of fighting for election 47 times. And he never won any, except the President of the United States. None in between. And these are the same kittens looking for somewhere a mouse, not electronic mouse, the real physical mouse. Large capacity to handle issues. As you grow up and up, your issue management is more like a Microsoft, PPT, Word, this. You have to look at issue management much more globally than low capacity to handle issues. They become experts actually. Believing in this continuity. And that's very difficult because mind is supposed to be continuous, analog. How to bring digital. How to make your mind digital. Not to the extent that you become robot, to the extent that you have two different partitions of continuity and the discrete. If I have offended somebody, how do I make my point that after 5 minutes we have forgotten? Like children, they fight and they become friends. That is a digital mind. But if we offend somebody if we do something here and there, oh, for 7 days. If I fight with my wife, which I do generally, and therefore every time we fight for 2 days, nowadays it's becoming longer. It's becoming 5 days. When we were young, it was about 2 hours, because we had some interest with each other. But now it's 7 days. I'm hoping it will become 15 days later on. But that is the trend actually. But no, left, right. Thank you. Want tea? No, thanks. Next. Because of the fact that the continuity takes over. Just don't forget, forget about past. Let's look forward better. Preserve continuity. Optimization of whole. We look at the whole picture. Michelangelo, when he painted, he looked at the whole thing. And then, of course, part. Very often we look at part, how to make it better. Part can never be optimized in the same way as whole. And what is good for whole, not necessarily will be good for part. As per the control theory, and I can tell you with that kind of confidence, my master's of thesis was in control system, and my professor was from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And one of the things which I learned, and my thesis work on master's degree in engineering was on how to stop ship in the shortest time. And the ocean is going. It's nothing to do with electrical engineering, which I did earlier. I did not see Titanic movie at all. I don't know what findings could have helped Titanic to avoid that. But certainly, optimization of whole is important. Ask not what country can do for you, ask what you can do for the country. When John F. Kennedy said that, he said, look at the whole, not part. And then decision making, ready to take risk, slow decision making. The larger the organizations, they become slow. In fact, there's a very good research. Why great companies become bad after 10 years? Big report, big published book. One of the processes, creativity and innovation in large companies start becoming less. Creativity and the decision-making processes are linked. Slow decision-making will give you low creativity. Many scorecards just not looking for profit and dollar and the green dollar. Now, of course, we should say euro, but dollar is in bad shape. So euro, and that's it. At the end, the exchange rate, the stock exchange is now making CEOs to run. If the CEOs are dictated by the stock exchange, rather than know their vision, how I'm going to get market capitalization. And that is what is one aspect we've got to look at this. Comfortable in all situations, and he is in no situation, she is with her father. Mortality. What is a leadership? Which we say project thinking and leadership relationship. Leadership believes in mortality. All leaders have believed in that. I'm born and I shall die. Whatever I have, I will do my best. Not going to worry or protecting my seat. Those leaders who were bad leaders wanted to protect the seat through domination, and they are no longer there. They were leaders from the different sense, but they did not believe in this. Pharaohs, of course, created wonder, but they also believed that they will never be, and they created pyramids based on the concept that I should be immortal. The whole genesis of Pharaoh, the pyramid, is on that. Same thing with the terracotta warriors. Same concept of immortality. It doesn't work. Making them fearless. Alone your mind, when it is fearless, is capable of doing something new and creative. A fearful mind will block you like hard blockages. It is called mind blockage. Unfortunately, there is no operations through which the blockages can be removed, except self-understanding of the process. Hard by blockages you can, but not the mind blockages. Meaning to existence, why do we exist? Motivation. They get motivated and passionate. You have seen this picture. Human-centric. Consideration for EQ as well. And this is a very important point. Our project thinking, the way we like to see eye to eye, if we don't have bias. If the moment moment we have bias about color, economy, which country I belong to, we are destroying the earth because we are so self-centered. First of all, we should say, hey, I'm talking to human being. Okay, I'm talking to animal kingdom. B. That should be the first reference point. And I think 21st century will see a new century where the only domination will take place in a couple of decades will be knowledge domination. Domination will continue, but it will not be based on gender, race, color, economy, region, continents, how you are divided by the oceans. It will be based on knowledge. And this is the oldest and strongest emotion of the mankind is fear. And the oldest and strongest kind of fear is the fear of unknown. And therefore you maintain the status quo. You maintain the status quo. Why? Because you are afraid of going to B from state A. Because we have lost confidence. If we lose self-confidence, we have destroyed ourselves. Pick up that area where you are confident. Fear is prison that quickly circulates through the entire system, paralyzing the will, producing a quiet sensation in some part of the other of the human body. You know, you can make out that clearly. If you're self-confident, whatever area I know how to clean this very nicely. And I have self-confidence. This self-confidence is as good as sitting on the 101st floor corner room of CEO who has confidence that he can bring the organization to a height. Same level of self-confidence. Don't distinguish in the type of self-confidence. Self-confidence is what you do to the very best. It's nothing to do in terms of activity you do. It's what you do in the best way. To overcome fear is the beginning of wisdom. And I think I have to get into that path because I still am not so wise. I'm trying to avoid fear so that I can become wise. And my suggestion to you is please try to avoid fear so all of us combined can become more wise and that we can share, but not preserve. R.W. Emerson, the wise man in the storm prays to God not for safety from danger, but for deliverance from fear. Very interesting quote. Attributes: charting unknown paths, creating unknown paths, scouts, curiosity. That is the things. What is there next? Building teams, providing understanding and aligned varying perception. Communication to the power 3. Communicate, communicate, and communicate. 80% is communication. We create barriers of communication like the speed breakers. Do you think I am the first cousin of Einstein? You would have understood. We don't worry about feedback. And the problem is we don't have right. We are simple. Simplicity is beautiful. Genius is that person who brings complex things into simplicity. The fool is that person who makes simple things into complex. I'm not saying all the consultants are fool, but that is what they do. Ultimately, it is the people's smiling face that are going to make or break the company or society. It is not the assets, it's not the brand, it's not the facilities. Mahatma Gandhi and Mother Teresa, Saint Teresa, convictions and belief of leadership, non-negotiable and determination. Never give up. Is a modern day 3 years old who is getting affected by the computers nowadays rather than playing in the field. Comfortable, positive attitude in all situations. I mentioned that before. Super freedom and responsibility, he's free. Self-call, be accountable, self. Opposition to change, new vision and alignment of perception. Barriers, opposition to change. This barrier we must look at bringing people together, understanding them, listening to them. God or whatever the creator is, or whosoever is, I don't care. We have got 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should listen twice than what we talk. Except that in this case I have to talk more. I'm not so don't say what I preach I don't follow. But in this case, I'm told not to follow. So that is the exception. Risk averse, dynamic ability to look at this. Risk management, as I mentioned in yesterday's panel, 50% risk management. In the human race, there is no finishing line. It keeps on moving the way we come together and we learn more. And more we know, more and more we realize how little we know. More and more we know how we realize that after all we are the same human beings. And more we know how we realize that chimpanzees are more intelligent than us sometimes. The latest report says that human beings have weaknesses, that chimpanzees are much better there. So even we should be kind to chimpanzee, not only when we see them in museum. I think they have some positive thing also to contribute. Every living species, that will be plant, animals, or whatever we are, every living being, we can learn something from them. The only thing is, do we have attitude to learn? And it is that learning attitude of the children that we should adopt. Child is a father. Some slogan was there a long time ago. What was the thing exactly? Child is the father of the man. Child is the father of the man. That means we have to, at the same time, we should not behave like children in a civilized world, but we should learn the wisdom part and supplement with child. So if we have the characteristics of curiosity and project thinking and the wisdom, what not to do and what to do, we create 21st century a better place for the human beings to live and make it sustainable rather than destroying it. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a great pleasure to be here and giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Presentation and for your contribution. We have 5 minutes. A question, please, Alan.
Thank you, and thank you, Adesh. I'm Alan Harper from the UK. You mentioned EQ, and some of us are taking an interest in SQ, in this forefront of understanding consciousness and moving forward, and I wondered if you had anything to say about that. And the second thing is, you talked a lot about fear, and some of the great wisdom writers have made it very clear the opposite of fear is love, and whether you want to say something about that.
You know, I'm small. No, but I can tell you that I'm a good manager. I am very good in delegating. Would you please answer about SQ yourself? Because you have been dealing this for a long time. SQ, what he means is spiritual quotient. And the answer, mic goes to?
I wasn't planning to do that. You may know there is a book written by a lady called Dana Zohar called Spiritual Intelligence. Her book is written very much from the perspective of a neural physicist and how the brain works, and she describes a part of the brain that is known as the God spot, and some people have a bigger God spot than others, and some go down a path or a track of taking an interest in religion. There is a second book called Spiritual Intelligence, written by a lady called Mikhail Levin, who calls herself an intuitive. She's very interested in the Vedic tradition and the chakras, and talks a lot about that. And she is one of these people who can see your energy path and describe that and tell you where you have issues and problems. And if you find that extraordinary, she works in England at the Institute of Directors once a week with chief executives and board members of large organizations. This is a huge topic, so I'll try and keep it very brief. The spiritual quotient, I believe, has kind of two sides to it, which in one organization I work with we coined as little s and big S. So I think there is a common understanding, or I've never found anybody prepared to argue the opposite, that in every human being there is part that is body, part that is mind, part that is emotion, and part that is spirit. We sometimes call it the human spirit. And there are organizations such as spiritatwork.org. There was one called spiritinbusiness.org, who are working to try and help chief executives and to try and help to create organizations that enable people to come to work as their whole self, body, mind and spirit. In the United Kingdom, I chair something called Workplace Ministry in 2 counties, and one of the chaplains talks about an individual who goes to work in a car company every day, who says as he crosses the bridge into work, he leaves his brain behind, never mind his emotions and his spirit. And this is not healthy for human beings. So that's just very briefly something about Spirit at Work. And if you go to spiritatwork.org, you can read about the International Spirit at Work Awards, run by a lady called Judy Neal out of the University of New Haven, although she's just retired. And you will find some very interesting companies who've won the award and being case studies in this area. On the subject of love being the opposite of fear...
I can talk.
Good.
I empowered you only for one. Sorry, because you are so emotional about love, I thought we will cross over the lunchtime. I think the point which Alan raised, very important point on love and fear. In fact, they are opposite to. You cannot be in love mode if you are fearful. In fact, prerequisite of love is fearlessness. And all leaders who are fearlessness, you would find, not all, by and large, I have not done any study, but I think fearlessness is the prerequisite to provide love. When you're not worried about it. And our keynote speaker here, what a great man, Malaysia. That's the right way to say it. How do you pronounce? Malaysia. Waansa.
Valenza. In Polish language, Valenza.
Valenza. Valenza. Valenza. If you repeat 3 times, you cannot go wrong. Valenza. 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 Valenza is heart-touching. He spoke from heart. When your mind is very strong, then you never intellectualize. You speak from heart. Then becomes you really fearless. He was fearless. He did not look at 225,000 soldiers in tanks. Everybody was saying, computer was saying, you cannot win. Even computer today will say you cannot win. But he won. What was that factor which made him so great? My hats off to him. And both to him. It was the fearless. Fearless. And therefore he had love for Polish people. We have a right to be free. Full stop. Mahatma Gandhi said the same thing. I asked him just he was leaving, he didn't understand. He understood to the extent that he replied well. I said, did you read Gandhi? 14. Of course, I understood that 14 means he was 14 years old. 1957, he is 1943 born. So 1957, I calculated quickly. He said, yeah. That means that is the love is necessary, very important, but prerequisite is fearless mind. You wanted to say something? That's why you're ahead.
One aspect of a fear is time elapsing. You said at a certain moment, leader, life and death. How is possible to control the time that is so essential in the projects for a leader? Do you have some suggestion?
Very good. Very good. I think this is excellent. The previous question was also excellent, but this is equally excellent. There are 2 ways of getting the time done. One is by network techniques, by saying how far behind we are. We want to work here, you got to break it CPI is equal to 1, SPI 1, otherwise, the exit sign. By exit sign, you're going to take that sign. Fear, no, not this sign. It is necessary. But what level is very necessary? Because if you don't create that kind of small fear, it doesn't work. It's like any instrument. When you play violin or when you play guitar, 2 loose of a guitar cannot play. Too tight of a guitar, the string will break. Where do you draw the line? the balance between what they can adjust. Like I'm a diabetic, I don't take too much cakes in front of my wife, but I do. But that's a different story most of the time. Nowadays we're away, so I take a lot of cakes. But that balancing act is the key. And the point you raised, you need both. You can't run an enterprise on love basis. Ah, great job done. He has done no job, great job. You know, we are human team building, okay, great job. Performance cannot be compromised, delivery cannot be compromised. But how to motivate him? That communication, how it is important for the company. You being head of one of the largest steel consulting company in the world. How do you motivate him? How do you provide meaning to him? Many times you don't provide meaning to the people, why they work. So I'm not saying that you should not have fear. This is a good point you mentioned. But level of fear with motivation, that fear will get converted into passion. I think the challenge today in the world of the G8, perhaps look at it very carefully. The challenge to the industrialized nation is how to convert that level to passion. And that means enterprise. How do you convert an employee into entrepreneur? Entrepreneur is delivery oriented, is passionate oriented, and he has fear of one kind, that he may not become billionaire. Therefore his motivation is to come with ideas faster. So I think it's very good, important. East plus West divide by 2, EW by 2. I think that new world, in my opinion, is going to be the best of East, the spiritual, this part of emotional, and the best productivity, technology, new advancement of West. If you combine these two and take the median center balancing act, the new world will be far, far attractive. Unfortunately, many of us may not be there to see that world. But that's no problem. Our next generation will see. Good question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adesh.
You can shout.
Yes, of course I can. I used to be a pack leader, so I know how to make a lot of noise. So, one of the other things that people are doing research into are, of course, emotions in projects. I have done some research, and of course, Andrea, who gave a talk at this conference, talking about the progress of their PhD. So, in terms of project thinking versus operational thinking, have you any suggestions about how to deal with team members who may have such a low self-esteem that they, to quote Groucho Marx, they feel so low they could walk with their dachshund on stilts?
Very good. They're all PhDs.
As minimum.
Quality. Of course, there is genuine PhD. He has trained 100 PhDs under him, and he still looks very young. Now, I think the point you have made is very important. We have converted a child with the highest self-esteem to garbage, to vegetables, by making them to have low self-esteem. Society has created, organizations have created. We are responsible for self-esteem. If we are responsible for the disease we have inflicted, we should also be responsible to provide vaccine to that virus. And that would come when you don't compare the self-esteem as an ideal situation. Whatever level he has, there are social factors, economical factors, his encounters in the office, his encounters with family, whatever it is, you must be passionate about him. Yes, look at him, listen to him, why he's like that. And that's a very long-term process. And you don't have time because everything is fast. And therefore you don't attack that problem. It continues. But I think self-esteem and self-confidence are opposite side. People with low self-esteem have low self-confidence. And therefore, self-esteem is the reason for self-confidence. Self-confidence is the manifestation of that process, is esteem.
Yeah.
And actualization theory, fourth stage of Maslow is self-esteem. And the fifth stage of Maslow is self-actualization. When you believe in you, like Mother Teresa, they were all in stage 5 of self-actualization. So therefore, the question is very good. How do we build self-confidence? Giving the opportunity to them in those areas where they are good at it, rather than just doing something else.
Just a very small one.
Maslow actually wrote spirituality and not self-actualization in his original book.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
It's the management schools who changed it because they thought spirituality would be misunderstood.
Thank you, Guru.
Yeah.
Some of my slides will go through change, and I will send you invoice of the cost of changing it.
What it is to be
Very
an
good point to
optimist.
mention this.
What it is to be an optimist.
Bend over and pick up that sixpence for now.
And thank you, Adesh, for your amazing presentation and contribution to this session. Thank you. Yeah.